Hi there. Welcome to the greenhouse at Durham College. My name is Ryan and I'm here today to provide you with some growing tips. And so what we're doing today is we're going to talk a little bit about potting up our tomatoes. And so you can see we have a full tray of seedlings here that have grown too big for their cells and they need to get potted on. You can see some tomatoes also in our background at various stages, and we'll talk more about that later. And so what we're doing is we're taking them out of these 128 cell packs and potting them up into these 4-inch pots. Now, we've started these tomatoes on April 6th, and these tomatoes are destined for our field. And so depending on when you're going to transplant outside, whether you're growing them out in the greenhouse or whether you're growing them out in a high tunnel under protection, it will all depend on when you want to start your tomatoes indoors. The type of space you have, lights, greenhouse or no greenhouse, will also determine how early you can start plants indoors. Luckily for us, we have this great greenhouse space and we're able to start tomatoes like the ones in the background there in February and have them fruiting now. So as I mentioned, these ones are destined for the field, and all we want to do is pot them up. And so we have 6 varieties of tomatoes here, all in one tray. These are all cherries and beefsteak varieties. So all we're going to do today is pot them up from their cell packs into bigger pots. And once they get big enough to take out of the cell pack, all you're simply going to do is squeeze the bottom, coax them out, take the plug, and just very gently stick your finger in, create a little hole, and tuck your plant in there. Tomatoes benefit from putting them in just a little deeper. Gives them a stronger stem, helps them grow a little more sturdy, and keeps them from falling over later. So all we want to do is pop them out of the cell pack. It's really good to water your tray before you do this transplanting. If your soil's dry on your plugs, when you go to pull it out of the tray, it's not going to stay nice and compact like this. And you want to wait until your tomatoes, their roots, have really outgrown the cells before you pot them on. A good rule of thumb is they have at least their first set of true leaves on them here. And we want to try to minimize as much damage to the roots as possible. And as I'm going, we always plant a little more seed than we need, as some of them don't germinate, some of them don't grow as strong, and I can select out some of the better ones. That one, the soil didn't stay on very well. And it's as simple as that to pot up your tomatoes. What you want to do is make sure you don't forget what variety it is you're potting up on your tray. And it's super important that your tag travels with your new potted up tomatoes so you remember what's what later when you go to plant. And all we're doing here is just to talk about our soil mix a little bit. The reason you don't want to keep them in here is because they really run out of food. And potting them up in here, they run out of food, they also run out of space for their roots, and they also have a lot of competition for light being so densely packed in here. Potting them up gives them a new growing space for their roots to develop more, for their leaves to develop, out and get more access to sunlight, and it gives them some nutrition in their new potting soil. So all we have used, what tomatoes really like, is a good organically rich soil. So we've just used an off-the-shelf transplanting mix that has very little nutrients in it, and we mix them with something like worm castings, which you can get at local hardware stores or nurseries. You could also use compost and a range of fertilizers as well to add to your organic growing medium. So once they're potted up, they're ready to get watered and put them out on the bench. And so I'll just show you some of our other tomatoes that we've started. As I mentioned earlier, depending on the time of year, where you're going to put them in your field, and when they're going to get transplanted, you can start tomatoes earlier or later. So these are some that we started about 3 or 4 weeks before the ones I was transplanting there. And these ones are going to go into our high tunnel hoop house out in the field, so they'll be under protection, and so we can put them out a little earlier than the ones that will go into the field because they have that protection from the elements and from the heat. And our tomatoes over here are ones that we started in February, have potted up to 4-inch pots like you just saw, and then finished off in these 2.25 gallon pots. And now we have tomatoes that are already fruiting. And we keep these in our greenhouse, which we're lucky to have, to make sure we get nice early tomatoes in the season. And many of these are just starting to fruit now. And so we should have tomatoes in a few weeks. You can see some of the Tiny Tims here with tomatoes, and this Super Bush variety here as well. So these are some early tomatoes we'll have in our greenhouse. Some tomatoes getting ready to go in the hoop house in a few weeks, about a week or so before or at the last frost. And then these tomatoes here are going to go out in the field, out in the elements, in cages. And so they're a few weeks behind because they're not going to get planted out until the end of May. And I like to be safe, usually first week of June. And so that's potting up tomatoes. Hope that was helpful. Stay tuned for more videos. Happy gardening.